IOBSE Check-In, a series of interviews that may be hosted by different teams covering different topics about the security industry, our members, and or our students. And this session is coming from the comms desk. I'm your host, Bobby Louisant, Director of Communications with IOBSE. And today's guest, we are honored to have the BHART ARELLANO, Senior Manager of Protective Services and Global Travel Security with Salesforce. BHART, welcome.
All right. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you for joining. And I just want to clarify some things because, I think for me, I've been questionable. I thought you were from LA, but I think you're from the Bay. Are you from LA or the Bay?
I'm from the Bay, Northern California and the Bay, yes.
Okay. But you have lived in LA for some time. So you're from the Bay originally, but you have lived in Los Angeles.
Yes, yeah. I'm from Northern California, but I've lived down in Northridge and Calabasas and Simi Valley, and one stint when I was younger in my early 20s, and then I was down there again, really roughing it in Hermosa Beach at 98 to 2000.
Yeah, that's a tough life right there. Yeah, Hermosa Beach, especially during those times. I don't know how you left.
It was rough. It was rough. Yeah.
Well, very, very cool. I mean, I have a very serious question. I think we got to put it on the table, right? Dodgers or Giants? Baseball.
Not a huge baseball fan, but I'd have to go with the Giants just for local support. But I'm Niners through and through for football, so I stay there all the way through.
We're not trying to go football, man. We were talking baseball here. At least I had a chance. No chance in football. I'm a Raider fan. I don't know if we're gonna ever get there anytime soon. Well, very, very, very cool, man. Thank you for joining us. Very interested to hear a bit about yourself and your career. And the theme of our discussion today is getting to know you, BHART, right? And what do you do, right? And it's really just to help educate some of the younger professionals and students out there about careers in this industry. And so I think to kick things off, let's just start with your career. Like, I know you got like a doctor's degree in security to do what you do. So can you explain how you went about all that?
Yeah. No, thank you, Bobby. And again, it's great to be here and for the opportunity to kind of share and to talk and everything IOBSE SE does is so important. So it's great to be here, especially for the students. So first off, I've been in the industry just over 36 years. So it's an interesting, a minute. And it's kind of one of those careers that I didn't realize was going to be a career at the time, because it's not something when you're 5 that you think, when I grow up, I want to be a loss prevention detective or security like firefighters or police. But it's one of those careers that I fell in love with. So I was in retail, just working part-time, and got asked to be part of the loss prevention team in Bullock's Northridge. Bullock's a company that's unfortunately gone, but I was there. So I was working undercover, catching shoplifters in that store, and then moved back home up to the Bay Area, and I worked at downtown San Francisco and downtown Oakland undercover, catching shoplifters. And as you can imagine, it was some pretty wild times in the late 80s, early 90s in that.
Right.
From there, again, I was thinking this is just a part-time job while I'm going to school. I was enjoying it, but wasn't thinking of it as a career. And all of a sudden, an opportunity presented itself, and I had that epiphany in that moment and said, I've been doing this now a few years. I really like it. And now I have an opportunity to get into management. It can be a career. And that's how I kind of entered in as an assistant manager and then moved my way up. So I held several different loss prevention manager positions in Northern California and Sacramento. And then in 1999, I was promoted to, or 98, 99, promoted to a director of stores. So a loss prevention director. And that's where I was back in Southern Cal. So I had all the Southern California stores from Pasadena to San Bernardino to I had Fox Hills, downtown LA, Manhattan Beach, all the busy stores. My office was in Del Amo. And that was my first team, managing a team. There were about 20 stores at the time.
Got you.
never a dull moment, never a dull moment. Really enjoyed it. And an opportunity presented itself to come back up north. I moved back up north, and over the years held a bunch of different regional director positions, and then also was corporate. I was in charge of corporate investigations for a time, and special investigations unit dealing with organized retail crime. And then I also at one point was the director of training and administration, where I helped develop policy. I helped develop training programs, helped develop our learning management system that was super cool. Civil demand, where some of the retailers out there sue people civilly when they catch them for shoplifting, and that ended up being a cost neutral way, in a sense, to offset equipment costs, not payroll, but equipment costs. So we would generate the revenue with increased theft activity, background checks, workplace violence, and legal liaison. So in that role, obviously I learned a lot and saw a lot. So really enjoyed all of that. I was with Macy's, Emporium. It all merged together for 27 years. Really enjoyed it. So a long, long time. But unfortunately, the landscape and territory was changing quite a bit. And unfortunately, you see with Macy's, they're continuing to change. And I had an opportunity and was recruited by an ex-leader of mine to be an integrator, to work for a company called Navco. It's a
very familiar with
smaller.
Navco.
Yeah, it's a smaller, privately owned, and now it's an employee-owned company based in Orange County. And I'd always been an end user, but the coolest thing with this is it really forced me to understand how everything worked. So it was a stretch, right, going from an end user to how this works. And at that time, it was a little bit smaller, so I had to really learn system design A to Z, from the cameras, the alarms, and the access control. And a couple things that were helpful is, first off, moving from being at one company for so long into this integrator role was probably the best thing I could have done, because I ultimately ended up having to learn so much and start new. I had to learn how to use Salesforce, for example, to generate my leads. I had to do cold calling to get customers. I had to learn how to, like I used to say, be a doctor, right? You walk into a doctor, you say, oh, my shoulder hurts. If I say, oh, just take some pain medication and leave, I'm not going to really assess what's going on with the shoulder. As a security consultant, which was my role, when I was meeting people, I learned how to ask and really listen. Like, what are the issues? What are the problems? What's going on there? How do they want to use the system? What's their technological expertise, right? And what's best for them. So really listening to that. And I never really saw it as selling, even though that was a huge part of the job. Ultimately, I was there just over right around 2 years. I had about 60 clients that I had built up, most of them. And some of the big ones, Chevron, Levi's, Williams-Sonoma. I had Turo. It's like Airbnb for cars, super cool business. Some wineries, restaurants, college, etc. Learned a great experience, but I realized I really missed loss prevention, and I really missed being on a team, and I missed investigations. And Williams-Sonoma had an opportunity open itself, and Debbie Maples, who's IOBSE, was the leader there. So, and I made the jump back into retail to Williams-Sonoma, and I was a leader for the corporate security team there. So I had the guard operations, the GSOC, emergency response team, ERT, campus safety, security, awareness, and investigation. So really great experience, San Francisco, right there by the water.
Yeah, I want to jump in a little bit here, because I mean, you just went through, I mean, I want to say probably like 5 or 6 different careers. It seems like it just, and I mean, just based off the experience that you've had in first of all, loss prevention and that time at Macy's, and, being able to have all that experience gained, being able to work there, deciding to make this a career. Just really quickly, I mean, you mentioned going to school. What was your background for education?
Well, ironically, I was a music major for a number of times.
There we go.
So
that's exactly what I was looking for.
So I was going in the creative time, and my first stint in LA, I was actually going to recording engineering school also. So I was going down that whole path. And the last funny tidbit is, at that time, one of the other reasons I got into loss prevention is my hair was super long and I had this beard and it wasn't quite fitting the dress code for sales. So I could easily work undercover in loss prevention.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. I love that. I mean, I find that everyone you talk to in this industry initially started down one direction, ended up getting a job in the industry, and then shifted once they realized like there was an opportunity and a career and a future in this industry. And then from there, a lot of it is like probably like baseline education that you take away from your education, I'd say. Yeah. But then you learn more just being in the field or working within the business. And I find that a lot of people end up grabbing a lot of experiences in a lot of different buckets just from being around in this industry. You know, for me, it's the flip side. I was part of ADT Tyco Johnson Controls for 22 years, right? And came from that integration space. And now I'm an end user. So I love the way you flipped that because it's a huge difference, right? I went from catering and customer service and selling. I was a sales lead and had customers all over the place. But then now here I am as an end user managing kind of the business and understanding how to protect the business. And I'm a tech person. So what technologies all of my partners like yourself utilize in order to do their jobs every single day. And, you know, it's a little bit of selling, I want to say on my end too, still, right? Especially like going for budgets and trying to convince folks to do the right thing. But then at the same time, it's just such a huge difference. And I really appreciate being on this side. I don't know if I would ever go back to the integration space. Not yet anyways for me. But I was, I did not know that about you. So very cool that you were at Navco for that time. So love that. And love the way that your journey progressed to where it is today. So next question, current role. You know, so let's go back to your current role. You are Senior Manager of Protective Services and Global Travel Security, which seems like two roles to me, but so in this current role that you're in, I understand you have Protective Services underneath you for EP and celebrities, global travel and safety, and corporate investigation. So you got those three buckets. What keeps you up at night in managing all of that? And maybe that's two questions. Like maybe go over a little bit about each one of those different businesses, and then I'd say end with what keeps you up at night.
No, that's perfect. So yes, I've been at Salesforce now 2 years, and I was originally brought on board for corporate investigations. So kind of a very narrow and deep scope focused on building that program. About 8 months ago, you know, I was asked to take on my current role. And the nice thing, again, with the diverse background I've had, I've dealt with the, you know, the protective services, all these different components and aspects. So the first part is the protective services piece is really actually the whole team, or my whole scope of responsibility, or AOR, is anything that's protecting our employees and helping to keep them safe, whether it's in the office, whether it's abroad, whether it's traveling, whatever it may be. And in some cases, it's going to be directly myself or my team. In other cases, it's going to be helping to connect the dots of our various teams on the global safety and security team, which Keith White leads. And then Debbie Maples is a part of Keith's team, and I report to Debbie Maples.
Gotcha.
So protective services specifically, Mark Benioff, our CEO, and his direct reports have a separate team. They have a separate team for executive protection. My responsibility will be our SMT leaders, which are leaders. It could be CEOs, CTOs, other positions, EVPs, other high-level positions in the company, and really protecting them, whether it's travel. They may be going to a medium or higher risk location. They might need some help there. It could be spoofing. There's someone that's spoofing or doing things with their email, their alias, their information. It could be any types of online or any physical types of threats or concerns they may have, or anti-sentiment. So really it is protective services for those folks. When we have events, then it's providing protective services and support for any VIP or celebrity speakers we may have, any dignitaries that may be visiting, coordinating, helping to do the advance. Sometimes it's going to be physically there, running it, being on site, working it, being their protector. Other times it's going to be coordinating and managing a team of protectors. to really provide them that support. And the biggest thing with protective services is it's all about getting ahead of things, risk mitigation, proactive planning, and really just kind of thinking out of the box to avoid putting anyone in harm's way and to minimize the risks. I always say we're the visible invisible. Our principal knows we're there, but we don't necessarily want the rest of the world to see someone that looks like it's some high security environment. It's just not the way, that's not the Salesforce way, or really in the professional world, you just don't want that feeling.
Yeah. And, I appreciate that. One of the things that I hear often, because I work with folks like yourself over at Meta as well, is the advance. I have a question. What is the advance? Because it sounds like the coolest thing. Like for me, they're always like, well, during the advance, so what is the advance?
So for example, Dreamforce, right? We'll have about 40,000 folks and, huge event. So the advance on that would be determining what is the lowest visibility drop-off point for this person. How can we get them to stage and off stage most safely, but also very covert? So, how do we keep them out of the public eye as much as possible? That's one part of the advance. So getting the route, where's the vehicle going to come? Where are we going to walk them? How are we going to get them there? How are we going to get them off the stage? The second part is, again, what if there were an emergency? What if there is a situation? Do we have a safe room or a hard room? Where could we take them? Which way do we want to go? If everyone's going this way, we're going to go the opposite way. We want to go away from harm's way, but we also want to separate. So, in a familiar location, you're really planning it out, making sure nothing's changed and making sure your blocks and tackles are all in place. If you're in a new location, then you have to assess the routes, how to get there, the road travel, the building itself, any risks in the building. And again, find your safest spot. Sometimes it might be a bathroom, might be your hard room or your safe room in a small venue. But there's a lot that really goes into it, and you want to have multiple options. So you have that muscle memory. If something were to happen, you are not thinking, you're executing, in the sense of you already have your plan. Now you're executing, you're already ahead of it because you've got this plan in place. If you have a well-done advance, again, it allows you to react and respond versus having to figure out in the moment, which you don't want to have to do as much.
Which can cause panic. And the whole point of the advance is to make sure that no one panics and can execute efficiently the advance.
Exactly. And then with your principal, and sometimes with VIPs or dignitaries, it might be a one-time thing, but just making sure that there's an understanding that if you're touching, you're never going to make contact, but if you are, that means it's time to go. You have to get off the X. They've got to go. And so I think little subtle things like that and having that eye contact communication really goes a long way.
Got you. And before I get to the what keeps you up at night question, I do have one question. Out of all the leaders and celebrities you've met, who for you, BHART, was the coolest?
Going actually even back to my time down in LA, Magic Johnson, he's right. So there you go.
One of my favorites. That's for sure.
Super nice person, really good hearted, got a big smile. And, and we had one event where we had to kind of hustle to get off stage because there were a lot of people that wanted autographs. And he looked down and smiled with that magic smile and said, "This is cool." And I still remember that because he was so impressed how we got him safely off and didn't have to deal with anything. He just had that big old Magic Johnson smile. So it was a fun moment.
That is magic. Yeah, very, very cool. I've had an experience very similar where I took my daughter to a Laker game and we walked past Magic Johnson. My daughter was like, "Oh my God, that's Magic Johnson." And, I didn't want to bother him. Right. And then next thing you know, he came up in between us and said, "Take a picture." And he like put his arms around both of us and was like, "Take a picture." My daughter was like, "Oh my God." That was crazy. Such a cool guy. Very, very cool. I love that.
Super nice. Yeah. Super cool.
Okay, cool. So last question I have for you. Oh, actually, no. Let's get back to what keeps you up at night.
Okay, sure. Yeah. And then the last two parts of my job too, I'll just hit that really quickly, is the global travel security. So we have the protective services. But global travel security, we have over 40,000 international travelers. So this is really providing guidance, any intelligence, travel advisories, any support. We use ISOS as one of our vendors, and we can use them if we needed to get support or resources. But again, providing support for the global population of travelers. Protective Services provides that support, but for a much more narrow group of travelers. So you combine it, and we really make sure that people know and they're proceeding safely, and not going to some places if they're really high risk or just not safe to do so. And then the last piece that ties into keeping me up at night is the corporate investigation side, involving violence prevention, cyber harassment, stalking, those types of things that for, again, any employee. So employees could be dealing with an ex-contractor, an ex from a relationship, a random third party unknown. They could be dealing with any of those situations. And we're going to provide that support to, again, goes back to the consultant days, really listening and understanding what's going on so I can help give the best guidance and support. We'll do what's an online vulnerability assessment a lot of times for these folks, which basically is, I always say it's the person in the basement doing a Google search. We'll go through and we'll see anything and everything we can find on them on the internet. And then we come back with guidance to let them know, hey, I found your home. I know where you live. The floor map to your home is posted on 3 realty sites. We found all your social media. We know we had a recent one where we knew where the person's son was going to play soccer on Thursday at 3:00, and we knew the school. So we give them all that guidance and advice to help their privacy and to help make them less vulnerable and less accessible for them. And then we do an open source investigation if there is a third party to see what our risk is with this external person, what's going on with them, the best that we can find. And from there, like I said, I'll connect the dots to make sure we get that support for this employee, whether it's, again, cyber, online, physical. We can work with our security operations and guard teams. We can work with law enforcement if needed. And then mental wellness, right? They may need some support and some counseling or other things because they're dealing with situations that, we wouldn't really want to deal with. So those things, the workplace violence, assessments and prevention are what keep me up at night. Because these are the things that I take the protector role very seriously. I feel like, and I say this, I don't mean it corny at all. I think of these folks as our sister, our brother, our mother, our father. I mean, this is this could be happening to anyone that we know. And unfortunately, we could do our best to assess the risk and do everything to help protect, but people are very unpredictable. So again, trying to stay ahead of it the best we can, but a case isn't ever fully closed. We just have to always stay on point and stay updated and stay really connected and stay in a supportive role the best we can to make sure our employees are safe. So that's the number one priority, and that is the stuff that does keep me up at night.
Thank you for that. I recently just experienced, like I said, I've been in an integration space. I'm really good at hanging cameras and, installing door contacts, and I can tell you where to put readers. But recently, over the last, I'd say, year or so, I've been supporting our Intel team, and I didn't realize how much work goes into that. And so, like you said, making sure people's social media presence or their internet presence is within a safe kind of realm. I didn't realize how much work actually goes into that and how much exposure people have. And I don't know about y'all, if you checked yourself on the interwebs, let's just say, but depending on your presence could be a pretty significant risk, especially with what type of role you have, what kind of celebrity you are, what kind of leader you are. It could be pretty risky if you're too exposed, I want to say, right? And so I've seen some pretty scary stuff coming from our team, where I didn't realize like how much work goes into all of that. So very, very cool. And I also don't think young people realize that. I met, I want to say almost 10 years ago, a lady, and I cannot remember her name, but she worked for Major League Baseball. And that was her job. Her job was to scrub social media. And I was like, that's your job, is to scrub social media? She was like, yeah, all I do is I look for threats against any MLB team that's coming over or I don't even know if it was Instagram at that. Yeah, Instagram and Facebook at the time. And I couldn't believe she had that job. like that sounded like the coolest job, but today I don't know. That seems kind of scary. It's a lot of information.
Yeah, there's a lot of that out there, and we have the keywords set up, and we have teams that are monitoring that. Or again,
Right.
if it's a principal or someone, I'll put in the keywords in their name. But you are right. I mean, it's great advice for folks. Just go into a Google, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, Yandex, do any search engines, plug in your name plus your company, plug in your email address, try all those, see what comes up. People will be very surprised. There may be some college account they forgot they even had with some embarrassing
Right.
photos. So you've got reputational risk there too. But it's good.
Right.
We always advise keep everything private, just to your closest family and friends that you want to know where your kids go to school, that you want to know what you're doing. And then lastly, we always say post event, not pre-event. If you're in
Right.
LinkedIn, especially in our job, we're interviewing people. People don't always love us, right? The bad actors. So I think if you say, I'm going to X conference,
Such.
all right, yeah, I would say do it after. Last week I attended X conference. That just helps keep us safe.
Right. Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, thank you for that. I have one last question. So this one last question is really for like the future of our industry, future leaders, maybe some students that are considering roles in security. Based off of, your career experience and, obviously you were leaning into the music business early on, and transitioned into this security business. Any recommendations for the next generation of security leaders that you could drop a little nugget of knowledge for?
Sure, of course. I mean, obviously, I think you can see from me. I mean, I love what I do, right? I mean, I mean, life's too short in one regard to not do something you really enjoy doing.
Yes.
And at the same time, though, I'm going to say for our students and those that are new in the career, what I did learn is life is also long in the best sense of the word, which means be present, really enjoy that moment. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And it's not always how you start, it's how you finish and how you go from there. Because sometimes I think early in the career or in school, people feel like, oh, it's too late, or I can't do that, or I'm too far behind, or it's never going to happen. And you just keep moving, you just keep going, right? And those doors open and those opportunities, come to you. Or sometimes you grab them, right? You got to grab them. So I would just say, be versatile and just open to new things. Like I said, I was not planning on doing this. And then I fell in love with a career that has taken, that is so rewarding. Try new things. I always say adding spokes to the wheel. So all those different roles I took, I consider those were spokes to the wheel, where maybe initially I was an expert, so to speak, in catching shoplifters. Then I learned investigations. Then you learn each one you build on and you become an expert, or at least you know enough to be dangerous in each one of those, which means you can have an educated conversation with a subject matter expert, really learn more. You can listen and know key things to learn, but you get stronger. And I'd say, just giving your best. I mean, I like to coach. I work with youth also. So I would say, giving your best 100% effort, growing from your mistakes. Some of the hardest times in my career, when I look back, are some of the times that made me the strongest now.
Yes.
And it sounds corny, but it's really true. Because I think back in the moment, you're not seeing that. But if you keep fighting through, or you're punching out of the bag, so to speak, and you just keep working, those will make you stronger, and you really build that muscle. And then the last couple nuggets I'll say is, and this is, I think, as I'm later in the career, is just don't be stagnant. I mean, there's always, it's again, sports, it's competitive, right? You might be in the front of the race, but there are people running as hard as they can to catch up to you. Right. And so you've got to stay relevant. You've got to stay dynamic, and keep working. And, you'll be ahead, and you'll continue to grow. You'll continue to challenge yourself. And that keeps things exciting. That keeps things fresh, no matter how long you're doing it. And then lastly, and the thing that I really stay grounded on, is really being your genuine self, operating with integrity. People will remember you. People will know that. People will value that and want to work with you. And then, most importantly is just staying focused on your priorities. And for me, that's, self, my family, and supporting those around me, right? We do what we do for them. So I think keeping that in perspective, you can't get back that baseball game. You can't get back those moments in life. So I think finding that balance of work and personal is huge. And if you can find that good blend, there's nothing more rewarding.
Awesome. Thank you for the nuggets of knowledge there for the next generation. I think I took a few myself, just so I can carry them with me, but absolutely agree with everything, and very much in line with all of your recommendations. And thank you for spending this time with me to share your career and share the career that you've had, this great career. You said 36 years?
36, yeah.
I don't know where you got 36 years from. You must have started at like 12, but hey, we all had to start somewhere, right?
Oh, thanks, Bobby.
Yeah, man, we're at time. So in closing, again, thank you, Bart, for jumping on and having this check-in with me. I'd say to everybody out there, look forward to more future IOBSE check-ins. Thank you all for joining. Again, thank our guest, Mr. Bart ARELLANO, and just remember, we got our conference coming up in August. I think there's some posting that has gone out for that, and it will be up in the Seattle area. Beautiful time of year, so hopefully we'll get to see y'all there. And Bart, again, man, thank you for joining us today, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bobby. It's been a pleasure.